It's time to go out to the Boxer and Gerson guest line because it's time for Cleared to Play. We're going to take you inside the tent and get you updated on the latest injuries in the Bay. Proud to partner with UCSF Health on this segment and bring an associate professor of orthopedic surgery, Dr. Nirav Pandya. Hey, Doc, what's going on?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great, man. George Kittle's toe. What do you know?
I'm not worried about it. I think Kyle Shanahan even said it's just a toe. In general, the two main things you'd worry about, number one, did he fracture his toe? Doesn't sound like that happened. And they didn't say that it was a turf toe issue, which is the only thing that you'd worry about, particularly at that position, to be bothersome. May just be a little contusion, maybe a little bit of a sprain, but I think more than anything else, there's no reason that someone like George Kittle needs to practice and aggravate something like that. So if this goes on for 3, 4, or 5 days, then I'd be a little bit more worried. But he didn't go out in the game. There was no indication that this was bothering him while he's playing. So I think more than anything else, they're just trying to be safe and not have anything lingering going into the Super Bowl.
And I love Kyle's response today at the press conference, which was, no, it's just a toe. When asked if it was turf toe or a bruise, it's just a toe. And the same thing with Deebo Samuel and his shoulder. We know that it wasn't, quote, broken, but what did you see from Deebo in terms of his range of motion and his ability to play entirely against the Lions?
I mean, after that cheap shot from C.J. Gardner-Johnson, that looks great. You get hit right in that area and that shoulder, and he got right back up. So I'm not super concerned about it. I mean, I think they said it was, quote-unquote, a deep bruise, which typically means, particularly when you see like his motion looks good, his mobility looks good, he probably kind of bruised the rotator cuff. And the good thing about bruising that area is that it's not as bad as when you tear something. There's a larger structural area that's impacted. This really is just a pain tolerance issue, and he didn't look like he was shying away from contact. He didn't have any issues in terms of mobility. He looked like the Deebo Samuel that we're used to seeing. And typically with his deep bruises, they can take 10 to 14 days to get better. So now he's got even more time to heal, so I don't anticipate there being any issue. Ruled out that fracture, ruled out something more major, so he should be good to go for the Super Bowl.
Doc, can you take our listeners through the process of a stinger? We watched Dre Greenlaw and Christian McCaffrey deal with both of these, and then suddenly it seems like they're just fine 5 minutes later. What's that process like?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Whenever one of the key things we look for when anyone's kind of coming off the field and they're kind of holding their arm down at the side, number one, you're worried about if they dislocated the shoulder, but number two, you're then worried about a stinger. And typically, number one, you rule out any kind of concussion, any kind of more severe neck issue, but then really what's ended up happening, it's almost like hitting your funny bone, but in a much larger area. You're getting stretching, you're getting kind of irritation in those nerves, and you literally can't move your arm. And based on the degree of injury to those nerves or stretch, sometimes it can be literally 15, 20 minutes before it comes back. Sometimes it can take 3 to 4 days. But what you're looking for on the sideline is once you've ruled out that neck issue, you've ruled out a concussion issue, you're saying, look, is the pain gone? Is the tingling, burning pain gone? Can you move your arm normally, and is your strength there? Because number one, it really just comes down to, can the player protect themselves out on the field? And then number two, can they be effective? But for a lot of these stingers, they will resolve pretty quickly. It goes from, I can't move my hand, I can't move my arm, to suddenly I feel like I'm ready to play. The key thing, and I worry more about Greenlaw than, say, Purdy, who had it a couple weeks ago, is when they're close together, those nerves are a little bit more sensitive. So if there was a Super Bowl this week, I would be a little bit concerned about a recurrence risk, particularly at that position. But then you get to 14 days out, so the risk of it happening again is pretty low, barring some sort of big blow.
And does that 2-week gap give you a lot of faith that Eric Armstead can get closer to 100%? And what did you see from him on Sunday in terms of coming back from the plantar fascia issue and the knee trouble he's had?
Yeah, I think that's, in terms of him coming back, he seemed to be playing well, but it's really, okay, how can you respond when you've only got, 7 to 8 days of rest in between games? And you looked good. The issue with the plantar fascia and the knee is that this isn't going to get better till the end of the season. Like this always probably is. If you'd ask him, there's some irritation, there's some degree of aggravation. The key is, can he play there for a large number of snaps, and is it impacting his movement, even if there is pain there? And he's clearly showed back-to-back weeks he can play a lot of snaps, he can be impactful. But I really think for this to become a non-issue, it's going to be an off-season of rest. But it clearly is not impacting his performance. And he looked great out there. He played a large number of snaps. You wouldn't know that he had a plantar fascia issue out there. He was planning and cutting and doing really well. So that's a very positive sign.
Doc, just yesterday on our show, Steve Kerr said that nobody's going to be able to acquire better players at the deadline than the Warriors because CP3 and GP2 and it sounds like I'm listing off Star Wars droids, but Moses Moody as well. All of them are going to be back. Maybe just give us a little bit on each one of them and what you expect as far as their ramp up.
Yeah, so I think for Moody, probably the easiest one. I mean, they said he had a grade 1 cast strain, which is just kind of this microscopic tearing, and he's back on the court and practicing. So he's right within that 1 to 2 week timeline for a calf issue. I think in general, what you're looking at for them is, can he get his conditioning back, with the time he's missed? Is he having pain when he's on the court? And then how does he feel afterwards? And those are really the key determining factors. Some people get out after this kind of calf issue, and they're fine. They're performing well on the court. They're not having any soreness, and they jump right back in. They can have a little bit of a minutes ramp up, but some players can take a little bit longer. But he's right on track. I think with CP3 in general, when you have this fracture of the hand that he's had a lot of, usually most players return to play right around 6 weeks. It sounded, based on the reports, that he's starting some on-court work. Typically, if they use plates or screws or pins or whatever to fix it, the bone is pretty solid at this point, but it's about getting that strength back, and particularly at the point guard position, you need to have that fine motor skill to be able to dribble, etc. So I do feel that probably he's got a couple weeks away just due to the fact of his age and the fact he has to get that hand mobility back. But in general, I think he should be able to jump right back in because these injuries don't necessarily impact performance when you look at NBA players. I think GB2 is the biggest unknown. Obviously he's had in the past his compromised core, and then he had the calf issue, and then he had hamstring issue, and you pile up all these soft tissue injuries. And for someone who maybe plays the 5 like Looney, who doesn't necessarily move around a lot, it's not super explosive, you'd be like, look, we can get you back in, not a big deal. But for GP2, all those areas that are injured are the areas that he depends upon to be effective. So number one, can he be effective? And number two, are you making sure that he doesn't get that second injury? So some people say it's just a hamstring. Why isn't he back out there? I think it's the injuries that GB2 has had as a whole that you want to make sure he doesn't get so he can actually be effective for the players and be that quote-unquote free agent signing that they need. Yeah.
Doc, great stuff. And thank you as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, guys. Take care. Yep.
All right, there it is. The proceeding was sponsored by UCSF Health.